coaches. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, they can't hold a flame against you, ay. Blow the whistle, blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, got the game, it ain't no issue, yeah. Blowing the whistle, I had enough with you, the championship, it is gone. Ain't listen to you, I can't give it to you, cause you don't know what I've been on. This is the Coaches Podcast.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Fantasy Coaches Podcast, guys. I am your host, guys, as always, Coach Steve. We are back. I told you guys we would be back. We would not be ditching you guys again. We're back for week 6 here. Coach Tyler will be with us shortly. He had some real life work things going on, but he will be here in a few. But I wanted to get us started for the day here because, it's Thursday night football. People want to get their nights ahead of them, maybe eat dinner and watch some football tonight. But we have a lot to talk about tonight, guys, and it's going to be a fun show. Obviously, what we do on Thursday nights now, if you're new or if you're returning to us, we do a favorable and unfavorable schedule for each position. We do the top 10 favorable and unfavorable matchups for each position. We'll go quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and then end it with tight end. And we'll kind of give our takes on some players there, so maybe some more tougher decisions that you may be concerned about. And again, of course, if you're in our YouTube channel, and if you're not, you should, because we put a great slideshow up together for that. Ask your fantasy questions, and we will, help you out, get you some fantasy advice, and get your lineup set for the weekend. So until Coach Tyler comes, we're gonna get started here, and maybe he'll be here before I finish the quarterbacks here. So starting here at the top. If we're going to start with the good, as always, because we like to start with the good, positive energy, and then end with some negativity. But if you're listening live on our YouTube channel, you're seeing here now the top 5 best matchups for quarterbacks in week 6. It starts off with Bryce Young, Matthew Stafford, Justin Herbert, Dylan Gabriel, and Mac Jones. As assuming that it looks like Brock Purdy is going to miss week 6 based on more recent injury reports as of today, Thursday. So those are the top 5 best quarterback matchups here. But who stands out? Who's someone that people may be considering? And I think most people would assume Stafford and Justin Herbert. You start those guys there. With Stafford, just be concerned. Just keep your eyes on the weather. It's supposed to be a bad nor'easter coming through the Northeast this weekend here, and that might have something to do with that. I heard it's supposed to be a lot of rain and a lot of wind, may cause some issues in the passing game. But for the most part, Stafford and Herbert are must starts. I think Mac Jones has shown us that he deserves to be a must start option right now. Just the way he's been playing the offense, despite not having weapons, he's able to put up 20 plus fantasy points basically in his starts so far this season. So the guys that are interesting are going to be a guy like Bryce Young, who, to this point in the season, again, still hasn't proven to us that he deserves to be the top overall pick a couple years ago. And especially in fantasy this year, things have been just kind of very up and down, for the young quarterback. The one good thing is that we might see a guy like Jalen Coker come back, who is practicing right now in camp. Well, not camp, but, practice this past week here. So that could be very beneficial for a guy like Bryce Young to actually produce, because he's just had one game over 17 fantasy points to be exact here, and that was against the Cardinals in week 2. But the Dallas Cowboys have allowed 240 plus passing yards or more to a quarterback in each of the last 4 weeks. Their secondary has been horrific, and I think Bryce Young kind of gives you that sleeper option potential this week if you're looking for a quarterback. Now, you might not right now, but I'll give some options when we get to the negatives who I might consider starting Bryce Young over, because I think there is potential for him to put up a good game against the Cowboys. Dylan Gabriel, I'm a little more concerned about him. I know the matchup on paper shows good, but the Steelers just know how to get to the quarterback there, and I think they're going to make the day very difficult for a youngster like Dylan Gabriel here. He looked a little bit better last week when they were on the road in London, but I think there could be trouble for a guy like that. So like I said, I don't really want to start Dylan Gabriel this week. I'd be more inclined to start a guy like Bryce Young if I had to choose between the two right now. The rest of the top 10 quarterbacks with great matchups this week is Bo Nix, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, and Jordan Love. Now, for the most part, all those names sound like starting fantasy quarterbacks. Again, I'm starting all of them. Bo Nix has been solid. He gets a really good matchup against the Jets, who've just been terrible in the secondary. Drake May has been on a breakout season so far. Jaden Daniels. Caleb Williams, for the most part, is putting up 20-plus fantasy points in most of his games this season. So, like, I'm happy with a Caleb Williams and a matchup that likely could be high scoring between the Bears and Commanders. And then Jordan Love. Jordan Love is the only one that might slightly pump the brakes on a little bit. Like, obviously, like, he's got a great matchup against the Bengals. It's a must-start option. But I could really see, like, Josh Jacobs running for 3 touchdowns this weekend. And then Jordan Love has 0 touchdowns. But they win by 20. So it's like just like what you're expecting. And that's my only small concern with Jordan Love. But for the most part, like all these quarterbacks I've just mentioned, all great start options for you for week 6. All right. I don't know how I'm going through these matchups so quickly, guys. All right. Going over to the bad. The bad here. And that's where we begin. There's some bad matchups for these quarterbacks this week, and the top 5 worst matchups this week for quarterbacks. And this is all based on fantasy points per game allowed. First off, you have Justin Fields, Josh Allen, Daniel Jones, Aaron Rodgers, and Geno Smith. Now, starting off, Josh Allen, you obviously start Josh Allen. He's great. He's fantastic. Obviously, he's been such a great quarterback this year, someone who's giving you stable numbers throughout the entire season. Justin Fields, who has, again, essentially the worst matchup this coming weekend here, plays the Denver Broncos in London. Now, the Broncos held a guy like Jalen Hurts to about 18 fantasy points last week. I think Justin Fields can get to that mark. So if you're concerned with Justin Fields, I don't think the upside for him to have 25 fantasy points because he throws for 300 yards because of garbage time. And I think that's the only reason you start him is because you assume that in garbage time, he's just going to be able to run the ball and obviously throw enough to get himself above the fantasy threshold of a starting quarterback. So I'm okay starting him. I'm not going to shy away unless I have a Bo Nix on the bench, or if I have like a Caleb Williams. That might be the only chances I will then switch my quarterback play a little bit there. Daniel Jones, I would consider him still a must-start option. He's been pretty consistent this season here. Obviously, in his resurgent season has been going through, and he's been putting up decent fantasy numbers. Just one game under 17 fantasy points, and I'm fine with that. It was a game against the Rams. It was a little tough matchup, granted, but I don't think the Cardinals are a secondary or defense in general that puts enough fear in my eyes that I wouldn't want to still start Daniel Jones unless, again, Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, guys like that. I consider them starting him over than. Oh, we have a chat. Hey, Albert, how are you? Welcome into the show tonight. But Daniel Jones is someone who I'm still pretty confident in starting for, even despite the difficult matchup. Now, the next two here, Aaron Rodgers and Geno Smith, there's 2 guys I'm trying to avoid this week, kid. For one thing, the Browns have been a really strong defense this year. And granted, Aaron Rodgers is putting up solid fantasy numbers so far. They're not great, but they're not horrible either. And I just don't trust it. They're just because they're home and they got a next fresh off a bye week does not mean that, that Cleveland Browns defense is not very strong, and they will find a way to get that quarterback. And I don't think the Steelers offensive line is that elite that they're not going to have trouble all day. And I think for me, that Browns Steelers game is going to be a very low scoring game. I feel like I'd see a 13-10 end up being the final score. So I'm avoiding Rodgers this week. Geno Smith too. I know he plays a decent matchup against the Titans, but it's not that decent because he has been able to not do much this season so far. He's been very bad, turnover prone. I mean, I don't think he's gotten a game with almost out of turnover. It's I guess one game he's got not have a turnover, but he's just been so turnover prone. It's really hard to trust him in fantasy right now. And I'm going to shy away from Geno Smith again as well there because I just don't trust him. Brock Bowers may not play. It's just it's a recipe for disaster for the quarterbacks, for a guy like Geno Smith right now. All right, let's go over the rest of the bad matchups for quarterbacks here. Dak Prescott, Baker Mayfield, Tua Tagovailoa, Cooper Rush, and Michael Penix Jr. Now with this, I'm still starting Dak. I really do believe that the Panthers run defense is what kind of caused quarterbacks to just not perform well, because the running game does very well against Panthers. But for me, it's still like I don't trust Javonte Williams to be a guy that's just going to run the whole game and they're not going to throw the ball at all. Oh, look who it is. Coach Tyler has joined in on the chat here. What's up, buddy?
What's going on, guys? Sorry, had a little late exit from work, but we're back and ready to talk some ball.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Let me just finish up the quarterbacks and we'll start with the running backs fresh for you. But again, Dak and Baker, like I'm still starting them. I'm not really concerned with the matchups on those two there. Tua scares me a little bit because he's just so inconsistent. Again, it's not a heavy bye-week quarterback week, so it's like not someone I want to start unless you're forced to in Superflex. And then kind of similar, Cooper Rush. He's probably starting likely no Lamar Jackson this weekend. After last week, it was just a bad showing. They had the Rams this week. You don't start Cooper Rush. Michael Penix could be a little interesting. I feel like the Bears secondary has some holes in it where I think the Falcons may be behind a little bit, forcing a guy like Michael Penix to throw the ball a little bit more. So he kind of gives me some kind of sleeper appeal in week 6 right now. So, but all right, Coach Tyler, you're back. Well, let's talk about some of the best running back matchups for week 6. We have Josh Jacobs, Ashton Genty, Kyron Williams, Blake Corum, Bill Crosby Merritt, Kamani Vidal, and Hassan Haskins. Those are the top 5 backfields for the best matchups for running backs this week. But I guess the biggest one has to be that Chargers situation. Kind of like we mentioned last week about the Cardinals. We have a backfield we're not 100% sure on. Which of these running backs, if either or both, are you considering playing this week?
Yeah, I am. It's really hard because, obviously we saw what Rico Dowdle did last week. So, Rico Dowdle's not a bad player. I definitely think he's definitely a different caliber than these two options that we have. But also, last week before our show got cut out, he was the one that I was saying to go pick up and play because there was a good chance that Chuba Hubbard was missing the game. And I projected maybe, 12, 15 points at the most, falls into the end zone, has a couple receptions. I didn't think he was going to rush for 200 yards. We talked about it on Monday. I feel like Vidal is the one that is the, home run hitter. He's the lightning in a bottle. So if anyone's going to have the day, I feel like it has to be him. Haskins obviously has worked those backup roles before, worked it in Tennessee a ton behind Henry and as things shuffled around there. But I just feel like if you're having to take the shot, if this is one of the, 2 options that you only have, then I want to take Vidal because he's the one that I trust could have more of a Rico Dowdle type day than Hassan Haskins probably.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree with you too. Again, people are, dealing with running back situations. People probably used a lot of their money to pick up a guy like Vidal or Haskins. And I'm going to start them. I'm going to flex one of these guys if I have them because you just don't know. It makes too much sense to not take a shot on a run defense that just allowed 200 rushing yards last year. Like they're not going to fix that in just one game there. So like both these guys have flex appeal and I'm going to start them if I need an upside play because you just don't know what's going to happen with either one. Sticking with this real quick. I mean, Josh Jacobs, obviously Genty, Kyron Williams, you start all 3 of those guys. Obviously they have plus matchups there. Blake Corum is, again, maybe in deeper leagues a sleeper appeal because they're playing the Ravens, especially a rain game. They might run the ball a little bit more. So if you're looking for a desperate RB2 in that sense, Corum might be able to fill that role in a deeper man league. Are you comfortable with Bill Crosby Merritt starting him now? I mean, he obviously had a really big week last week. He has a favorable matchup once again. Is he just a good RB2 to throw in right now?
He is one that I look at this week, just as I looked at different things throughout the day. Kind of a surprise DMP was Chris Rodriguez today. Didn't practice with a calf injury. And so I look at that, and if it turns the 2.5-headed monster into a 1.5-headed monster for at least this week, especially with the matchup, I feel like Washington can't dig too much deeper in the bag under Jeremy McNichols to find a third running back to play.
Yeah.
Krosky Merritt has been efficient, extremely efficient with his touches. Obviously, we saw last week, but he's averaging, I want to say, over 4.5 yards a carry on the season. And so, anytime he touches the ball, he's been able to be electric. He's been able to do exactly what that offense is wanting him to do. And now we have the chance that, his immediate backup is possibly not going to play. Obviously, they play the Monday night game, so we're a day behind on all of our, practice reports, knowledge, everything. So we won't know until Saturday officially if anything doesn't come out beforehand. But I think that it does line up if Chris Rodriguez isn't there for Krosky Merritt to really almost cement his spot at the top of that pecking order and could really be a great play for your fantasy teams this week.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. He definitely gives you flex RB2 vibes this week for sure. And again, he's not just running the ball. He's also seeing some work in the receiving game, which again, I do expect this to be kind of a higher scoring game. So I do think that's a plus matchup for a guy like Krosky Merritt right now. All right, let's go over the rest of the top matchups right now this week here. Chuba Hubbard, Rico Dowling. Obviously, we all know Chuba's not practicing still, so keep that in mind when talking about Rico. J.K. Dobbins, R.J. Harvey, Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears is obviously back now. Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, and Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson in their plus matchup. So these guys also within the top 10 best matchups for these backfields are coming up here. So anyone in particular, Coach Ty, you'd like to highlight here?
Yeah, it's something I said Monday. I'm going to say it again. I know we didn't have Chuba Hubbard practicing yesterday. I haven't looked at the Panthers practice report.
He didn't practice today.
Didn't practice today either.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is when I talked about people, look at the Cowboys and they've been in all these games against good teams. They're bottom 10 in the league in rush yards allowed. And again, we just talked about what Rico Dowdle did last week against the Dolphins. Eventually, we're going to stop, twisting that knife, Coach Steve. He just has to have a good week against anyone else. But if Hubbard's not playing, Rico showed exactly what he can do. And, I'm a big narrative guy. Anyone that has listened to the show consistently knows this. This is a big revenge game for Rico. The Cowboys went out, wouldn't pay him after a 1,000-yard season, and wiggled their way around to, Javonte Williams, who's having a pretty good season so far this year. But, they basically gave Hubbard the boot. They said, hey, thanks for what you did for us last year. See ya. And so, I look at it, and I think this is a great revenge game setup against a bottom 10 defense against the run. If Chuba isn't anywhere close to playing, which 2 DNP days makes it look like he still might have another week on the bench, then everything sets up in my mind for Rico to have not necessarily the day he had last week, but to still have an explosive day for you in fantasy and to feel comfortable putting him in your lineup.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely. I think Rico's a good RB2 you got to have in lineups this week without Chuba. And I guess it is trending that way. Trying to think about someone else here. I will be interested to see what happens with those Patriots. Obviously, Antonio Gibson, torn ACL out for the season. He was kind of like a thorn in this 3-headed backfield at one point here. So hate to see a guy get injured, but love it for fantasy, unfortunately. Again, flex options for these guys here. Bijan's a start. Tony Pollard's still a start, but again, I'm a little curious to see how much more work Tajay Spears gets. J.K. Dobbins obviously has been put out fantastic numbers. And again, a guy like Harvey might get some good play. They might be ahead against the Jets this week. So, all right, heading over to the bad matchups here. The top 5 worst matchups for backfields. Derrick Henry, Justice Hill, James Cook, Jalen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell, Quinshon Judkins, Alvin Kamara, and Kendre Miller. Now, just quick notes. Calvin Kamara is limited at practice right now, so keep that in mind this week. Right now, he's popped up on the injury report. But anyone you want to highlight here, Coach Tyler?
Yeah, I like that you have Jalen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell both as sits, partially because they're playing the Browns, and that's just a terrible matchup for running backs. But also, kind of like we talked about on Monday, Gainwell showed that he deserves some more role than what he's had. And Jalen Warren coming back, he's still Jalen Warren. He's still the starter. He's still the one. All the things you want to say about him. But if Mike Tomlin is able to look at what Kenneth Gainwell did last week and immediately revert him back to what he did snaps-wise and opportunity-wise when Jalen Warren was healthy, then this team deserves to go 9-8 and do just the exact same thing that Mike Tomlin has done for the last 5 years. But I like the sit because obviously the matchup, but because I think Gainwell has to get more work. And so we're looking at, the possibility of a new split in this offense where it's not all Jalen Warren and then Kenneth Gainwell is a third down guy or Kenneth Gainwell is a change of pace guy. There's a chance this becomes a lot more of a 60-40, 50-50 than it was 3 weeks ago. And so I would want to sit and see. Obviously, the matchup helps us do that and helps kind of, bolster that argument. But at the same time, you look at Gainwell last week, we want to see him, we want to see what his role is now that Jalen Warren's going to be back. It makes sense for us to say if it's just Gainwell, possibly start him because if he did against the Vikings, he can do it against a lot of defenses. But now we have to see what the split is. And so I really like the sit-em partially because of matchup, but also partially because we don't know what it's going to be between them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Some highlight the other guys real quick here. I'm not really interested in starting Derrick Henry this week. It has been rough to watch the production of that. Again, he's a flex at best. I think you almost be forced to start a guy like Derrick Henry, but I don't really want to. James Cook, again, bad matchup last week for him. I'm still going to go back to him because he's still the guy there in that backfield. And again, I do expect them to be ahead in that matchup. So I will allow a guy like James Cook to go. Quinshon Judkins, I'm not concerned with. The Alvin Kamara, again, just like Derrick Henry, these guys are getting old now. They're starting to show their age this year. And I want really nothing to do with Alvin Kamara to start right now. He might not even play. And if he doesn't play, maybe a guy like Kendre Miller gets a little bit of a sleeper appeal. But again, I'm not overly excited to start this Saints running game right now because things have not been great there, unfortunately. So moving over to the other half of the bad running back matchups: Isaiah Pacheco, Kareem Hunt, Michael Carter, Devon Achane, DeAndre Swift, and Rachaad White here. So, Coach Tyler, anyone you want to highlight in this tier?
Yeah, I don't know if I can fully trust the stardom for Michael Carter. The Colts defense has been, fairly good. We love the matchup coming in between Gannon and Steichen kind of reuniting, not as coordinators, but as the head coaches this time. But I just see a lot of difficulty with the Cardinals being able to get going. Obviously, Indy has been far past everyone's expectations for this year outside of the guy who sings the pregame songs for them. We love him. But one of the biggest things that I see outside of, just the matchup, Kyler Murray missed practice today with a hamstring injury.
You did.
If there's no Kyler Murray, that offense somehow gets worse. And that's really hard for the Cardinals to do. Which means that it's going to be really easy to key in on, I don't even know who the backup quarterback in Arizona would be.
Jacoby Brissett.
Exactly. It's real easy to key in on that backfield with Jacoby Brissett at the helm. And so I really don't trust Carter. I get that he's, supposed to be the guy. He's supposed to be taking over with Benson out, with James Conner out.
Yeah.
But I just see a lot more blood in the water because of the matchup, but also if Kyler Murray's not playing, that makes it really hard for a third string running back to be successful, even if he's getting first string running back carries.
No, I agree. Sorry, I'm a little tired.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, and that's lack of sleep the last few days. But no, I get your take on Kyler. It definitely can make things cloudy for their Cardinals situation there. The rest of the guys, Pacheco and Hunt, have just been killing each other, splitting reps. I mean, Hunt, I guess, is maybe the better guy just because he's the one getting the touchdowns. Devon Achane, I have no issues with. He's going to get his receptions in the receiving game. DeAndre Swift, not overly excited to start him, but I know Kyle Monangai has not been practicing, he didn't practice today. So, if he's out, I mean, they really have no one else to give the ball to. So Swift might be an okay flex. And Rashad White's fine. He's going to see work in the receiving game. And I think the 49ers run defense have weakened a little bit with Nick Bosa out for the year. So, all right. Heading over to the wide receivers with the best matchups here. Starting off with Tetero McMillan, Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, Xavier Worthy, who did miss practice again today. Marquise Brown. I have Tyquan Thornton as a name player, actually, to know. Calvin Ridley, Eric Adomayo, and Deebo Samuels, as Terry McLaurin is also no practice for the last 2 days, looking like he's going to miss another week here. So anyone you want to highlight here, Coach Tyler?
Yeah, I do really like Deebo. He has been an absolute steal for me in leagues with return yards because he's been doing outstanding as, a receiver, offensive weapon, and he's been doing fairly decent in the returning game. So that's been helping me out a lot. But I just look at this matchup, and with no Terry, you got to go somewhere, right? Bill can't have every carry. Chris Rodriguez possibly out. Jeremy McNichols, don't give him the ball more than you have to. Someone's got to get the ball, right? Jaden's back. He can't run every play. And so he's going to have to get the ball to Deebo. And I think that right there with you. I think that Cliff Kingsbury has done a great job of scheming him open this year. All the rumors, everything coming to the season. Deebo Samuel's fat. He's slow. He can't, do what he was doing in San Francisco. Those things might be true. But at the same time, he's getting open and getting the ball. And that's all that matters. And he's getting in the end zone at a decent rate. So I really do like Deebo. It's a, big game, Monday Night Football. So he's going to be in the primetime lights, but he's also really, I don't want to say the only option, but just about the only option for Jaden to go to outside of handing the ball off to the 1.5-headed monster that we just talked about a minute ago.
That's true. That is very true. The rest of the guys, obviously, McMillan, you start Tetero McMillan. Puka and Adams, you obviously start them. It's a fantastic matchup. Again, maybe a lower expectation if this game is going to be impacted by the weather. Again, if Worthy plays, you start him. He's just been kind of like the go-to guy for Mahomes when he's on the field. But again, if he doesn't, Hollywood Brown, Marquise Brown is a good flex. I think Tyquan Thornton ends up having a really strong game this week here. The Lions secondary allows big plays, and Thornton has just been kind of Mahomes' deep threat. And he's been getting yards every single week. He's not playing as much, but he's being used in a certain way, and I like it in this matchup. Ridley and Adomayo are both just flex options. Again, I'm not really thrilled to want to start either one. Again, unless Calvin Ridley's going to see 10 targets again this week, that makes him the only reason why he's a good flex appeal. And then we've already mentioned Deebo Samuel. So, all right, the back half of the good matchups for wide receivers, you have Marvin Harrison Jr., DK Metcalf, Chris Olave, Rashard Shaheed, DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Jacoby Myers, and Trey Tucker. So, Coach Tyler, anyone you want to highlight in this tier?
Yeah, we're going to go back to the Cardinals. Marvin Harrison Jr. just scares me with the possibility of Kyler out. Has already, been very big play dependent this season. And a lot of that is going to come even more into effect if Jacoby Brissett is throwing him the ball. And so I don't hate the matchup at all. The Colts, the place you can really expose them is in the secondary. But at the same time, I already don't love Kyler being the one trying to get him the ball. If Jacoby Brissett's the one trying to get him the ball, they better throw about 17 screens to him for him to have the fantasy day that you're wanting.
Oh, God. Yeah, no, I understand that there. Again, if Kyler does play, I still think Marvin Harrison Jr. is a fine option. Highlight the rest of these guys here. I mean, DK is literally the only one in that Steelers offense as well. And I think even Calvin Austin is actually missing practice. They're wide receiver 2 right now, so he's questionable for Sunday. Chris Olave, Rashard Shaheed. Shaheed's like that boomer bust flex, and Olave's more like the floor play for this coming week here. I think the matchup is good enough for them. Rome Odunze obviously is a stud right now, and I'm going to continue to start him. Hopefully, I know DJ Moore made some fuss over their bye week there about his role, so maybe they try to get him more involved. And then Jacoby Myers, again, it's not a great flex option. If Brock Bowers is there or not there, I don't really think it changes overall that much. And Trey Tucker, again, he's been decent. He's giving you like almost 10 fantasy points in most weeks. Again, those guys are just more like flex options. I'm not overly thrilled to start them, but the matchup is a positive one for them. So, all right, so let's get to the bad. Let's go to the bad matchups for wide receivers. Garrett Wilson, George Pickens, Jalen Waddle, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who did pop up on the injury report with a wrist injury this week, Jameson Williams, Mecca Ibuka, and Chris Godwin. So, Coach Tyler, anyone here you would like to highlight?
Yeah, with the Amon-Ra St. Brown, I looked today, and I think he was a full participant in practice. I know his questionable tag disappeared on Sleeper, so
good.
I would assume, yeah, very good. The bye weeks are hitting me hard. I feel like I got to go with Mika Ibuka, man. I look at this game, and this is one where I could 100% see, another Mac Jones legacy game if he is the starter. But Ibuka's just had such a great season, and I don't want to say it's flown under the radar, but, he's a top 5 wide receiver on the year. And, a lot of that is due to him averaging a touchdown a game, which doesn't hurt. But the targets have been, enough for him to be sufficient, right? If he's going to get in the end zone just about every game, then you're getting a touchdown out of it. That's great. This is a game where they're probably going to have to throw the ball, especially with Bucky Irving out. Rachaad White isn't bad, but they're not going to lean on him the same way they would Bucky, especially in a game like this.
Yeah.
So I think Ibuka is really quietly having a top 5 receiver season, and not enough people are talking about it. And at the same time, if you're just betting on a touchdown, he's probably a good one to bet on, because for some reason Baker likes to find this guy in the end zone. So I love him as a start. I love him this week, even with a bad matchup. You're still waiting on, Chris Godwin's getting the target share, but he's not exactly, 1,000% healthy. And so I trust Ibuka going forward until he gives me a reason not to. And so I like Ibuka as a start this week, even with a bad matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chris Godwin is someone I'm not overly thrilled to want to start. So that's just how I feel about him. Highlighting the rest of this group here, you have the 2 worst matchups, Garrett Wilson and George Pickens, who have been solid wide receivers. And I think you still start them. I think Garrett Wilson's more of a garbage time kind of player because there's just no one else. There's just no one else there for the Jets to throw the ball to. George Pickens, he's fine. And I think for me, the it being a difficult matchup is due to more, and like I mentioned this before, that you can just run on the Panthers, and they just don't allow a lot of wide receivers to do much because the wide receivers don't need to do much. And George Pickens has just been a volume hog since CeeDee Lamb's gone down. So you start him. Jalen Waddle might be the only one I'm a little more concerned about. It's flex option. He's fine. Again, if you look for other direction, maybe, but he's fine. He's going to be the target leader on the team there. Again, Amon-Ra St. Brown, you start. J-Mo, I'm not really interested in. The Chiefs have not allowed a lot of big plays deep downfield, and that's kind of where Jameson Williams has thrived when he does thrive. So it's just hard for me to want to start him because he's just been so – what's the correct word I want to use here? Just so not boom this year. So, yeah. So that's kind of how I feel.
So bust this year.
Yeah, that's probably a better term to use. So, All right. The other half of the bad matchups for wide receivers this week in week 6. You have Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman. You have the Chargers trio of QJ, Lad McConkey, Keenan Allen, Brian Thomas Jr. for the Jaguars, Travis Hunter, Parker Washington. Then you have the Falcons, Drake London, Darnell Mooney, and then the Patriots, Stephon Diggs. And I guess I threw Kayshon Boutte in there because I like him. So, Coach Tyler, anyone here you'd like to highlight?
Yeah. I look at the Jacksonville receivers. Brian Thomas Jr. obviously coming off a lot better week than he's had, but they're going against a good secondary. And as well as Brian Thomas Jr. did last week, that doesn't mean that he has fixed his drop problem. That doesn't mean that he's automatically back to who he was, after he broke out last year. He's still the same guy, obviously, just maybe not 1,000% the same player. And he's been a disappointment for you in fantasy this year. Like, you took this guy, but maybe late second, early third round, if that late. Trade JSN and Achane for
July. Yeah, July has a trade in our messages. Trade JSN and Devon Achane for Josh Jacobs and CD Lamb.
No. I think Achane is just too much of a threat receiving wise. And JSN has obviously just been Sam Darnold's guy, and that's not a bad place to be.
Yeah, no, I'm okay sticking with this. I get it because Josh Jacobs is off his bye now, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, he's off his bye, and then CeeDee Lamb will be hopefully back soon, and we all know CeeDee Lamb has been averaging 100 yards per game, but I still like JSN personally. Like Coach Tyler said, like I still prefer JSN. He's just been a target hog in that offense, consistent, and Devon Achane, I'm not going to shy away from him. Miami's offense might not be elite, but he's still going to see a lot of targets in that offense there. So I'm saying no. Coach Tyler's saying no, but I understand why you're considering that trade. So,
yeah.
All right, go ahead, finish up.
Back to Jacksonville. I just don't see it being a good day. We haven't had too many good days from Brian Thomas Jr., really from any of these Jacksonville receivers. I see him as a flex just because, again, the draft capital that you spent on him, it's really hard to have someone at least name value-wise, most likely production-wise, on your roster, on your bench to beat him out. But at the same time, I just see it being a rough week for Lawrence. I see it being a rough week for Jacksonville as a whole. Seattle is only a 1.5 point favorite, which maybe opens that up for discussion and putting him in the flex just because someone's got to score points. But I just see it as a difficult week for the Jacksonville receivers.
Yeah, no, I get that. Definitely get that. I'm not overly thrilled to want to start any Jaguars pass catcher this week here. Rest of the guys, I mean, I think Shakir is just a solid floor option. I'm kind of okay with that. Keon Coleman is like boom or bust guy, and he's been kind of like that all season. He either has a really strong week or just a very average, below average week there for him in fantasy. I'm okay starting the trio at the Chargers. I know QJ is dealing with a little bit of an injury right now, so that could even open up more. Again, very similar to the Panthers, Miami's. You don't really need to throw that much on them because you can run on them very well. But I'm still okay starting all three of those Chargers receivers. You start Drake London. Darnell Mooney's dealing with an injury. I know he's been out of practice a little bit, but I'm not going to start him. Stephon Diggs has been kind of just Drake May's the go-to guy the last 3 weeks now after kind of getting off that limited snap roll. And Kayshon Boutte is just a sit in my eyes. So, all right, let's get over to the tight ends here. Starting with the good matchups here. Tucker Kraft, Jake Ferguson, David Njoku, Harold Fanning, Hunter Henry, and Oronde Gadsden. Coach Tyler, who do you want to highlight here?
I got to highlight Fergie. He's been a wagon for me on the DraftKings. Love that guy. But, with CD out, obviously you had George Pickens propelled into that number one role. But the question was who was going to be number two, right? And you look at the Cowboys roster behind CD and George Pickens, and you're looking at guys like Kevontae Turpin and Ryan Flournoy and a whole bunch of nothing, right? And so we see it, and the biggest beneficiary of CD being out has been Jake Ferguson, right? The last 3 weeks, he's had 14, 7, and 9 targets. As much as we talk about, volume being king, especially for tight ends, if you're getting a minimum of 7 targets in an offense that, is fairly good, that is outstanding, right? I'm 1,000% on that, especially in your tight end premium leagues. He's just, racking up points left and right because the Cowboys don't have anywhere else to go. I, said it earlier in a conversation. I really think that there's a chance that the Panthers end up with this one. And that means that the Cowboys have to throw and keep up with it. And so it's just a feeling I have. It may just be the Cowboys hater in me. But for some reason, I woke up this morning, felt like the Panthers could win this game. And so I'll put it on tape here. When they get blown out 40-7, I'll look like an idiot. But if they don't, then I look great.
There you go.
Yeah, I think this is a game that the Cowboys are going to have to throw. Obviously, you have a lot of secondary issues for the Cowboys, as in Jerry Jones just pays the wrong guys in the secondary, and so that's their issue. But I think the Panthers are going to be able to have a little fun with this game. Like we talked about, Rico revenge game. There's a chance T-Mac finally gets a little breakthrough against, 2 of the least intriguing corners in the league, in my opinion, especially for what they're getting paid. But I think the Cowboys are going to have to throw. Anytime they've thrown, it's going to Ferg. And so, volume as it was, even in a blowout, he's getting his 7 targets. I think he could still stay at or around that range with CD out again this week.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Big Jake Ferguson fan this week here. Rest of the guys, Tucker Kraft, obviously you start him. David Njoku and Harold Fanning have been just so consistent. Like, you start them. If you have them as their tight ends, you start them. Hunter Henry, I have him as a start. I think he's a little bit more boom or bust with his role in this offense there. I think it will depend on how ahead the Patriots get, needing to pass the ball. Gadsden, again, he's interesting. He's had some up and down. It's a favorable matchup. Again, if someone like QJ misses or whatnot, maybe his value becomes a little bit more interesting, more steady in terms of the targets he's going to receive. But more of a sleeper option, a little less confidence in him, but the matchup is good. All right, the rest of the good starting tight ends, Evan Ingram, Jawan Johnson, Hunter Long, as now Brenton Strange has hit the IR, Mike Gesicki, Noah Fant, Cole Kmet, and Colston Loveland. Loveland, who's, I think, limited right now in practice this week. But, Coach Tyler, who do you want to highlight here?
Yeah, I'm going to say, I'm not betting on Loveland really doing a ton anyways, even if he does play, just because he's been so limited with these injuries. But I do like Evan Ingram this week. We see the London games, and they're very hard to gauge. The London games this year have been a lot better than they've been in the past, or at least the international games have been. And so, going up against a terrible Jets team, they're 0-5. They're going to be turning the ball over a ton, both with clock management and with actual turnovers. And so I think that Denver's going to have the ball enough that Ingram's going to be able to eat. And so I see Evan Ingram as a good start this week. These are the games that can get funky. Broncos are a 6.5-point favorite. And so there is a chance that it comes down to J.K. Dobbins just running the clock out from halftime on. But I think Ingram can get his this week. This is a great opportunity to, propel himself back into the reception hog that he's been against a defense that is very easily exploitable for a tight end.
No, definitely. I missed that because I forgot what person did you say?
Ingram.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I thought I heard Ingram, but I wanted to be 100% before I start blabbering on over here. I think Ingram looks like he's on track to come back. Personally, I think he's starting to gain some more reps in this offense, which is great. The rest of the guys on this list here, Juwan Johnson is someone who I'm sitting despite the decent matchup. Taysom Hill's back on the field, Foster Moreau's back. I just feel like his role is going to see a bit of regression after a strong start of the season. Hunter Long is someone who he has a guy that's not really proved himself yet, but I mean, they need someone to catch the ball there, especially in the short area. And that was Strange's job, is just catch the ball in the short area. Maybe that goes to a guy like Parker Washington or Travis Hunter now, but like Hunter Long is a deep sleeper that I think could end up being productive this week. The Bengals guys, I'm just concerned about starting Mike Gesicki and Noah Fant. Both those guys just don't really they just kind of cancel each other out. Like someone could have a good week, but you just don't know whoever it's going to be on a week-to-week basis. I'm sitting them. And then again, if Colston Loveland and Cole Kmet start, I'm not starting them. Again, I'm still waiting to see someone kind of take ahead of this game here. It really doesn't seem. I mean, Cole Kmet's the guy, but he's just not getting targets on his own with Loveland on the field there. If London were to miss this game, maybe Cole Kmet becomes kind of like a sleeper play. But yeah, that's kind of how I feel about that Bears situation. So. All right, let's get over to the bad for the tight ends, guys. Dalton Kincaid, Sam Laporta, Kyle Pitts, Brock Bowers, and Darren Waller. So, Coach Tyler, who do you want to highlight in this area here?
Yeah, I don't know. I look at Kincaid, and this is possibly easier to propel up off of the matchup, but I think that he's possibly a sit. He's been limited at practice this week as is with an oblique. And so obviously, the soft tissue, soft muscle, those things are really weird to handle, especially, in a game where you're going to get hit from the sides, especially being over the middle like him. But, I just look in, he's been another guy that's been a touchdown dependent guy, but it's just been a lot of, 4 for 40 type games. There's a couple higher, a couple lower, but at least to start the season, it was some 4 for 40. Obviously, blew up last week in the surprising loss to the Patriots. But even you look the week before that in a game against New Orleans that he should have thrived. 2 targets, 1 reception, 28 yards, and it was just a long touchdown. I'm not overly intrigued by that. And then you also take into account the fact that he is going into a hard, matchup. We have him as the worst matchup on the league this season or this week for tight ends. I'm okay pivoting to another option if you have one. I'm not a big Dalton Kincaid guy as it is. And I do think that this is a game that Buffalo's going to have to throw the ball, but at the same time, Atlanta's going to be running the ball a ton, trying to control the clock. They're going to use all the Bijan Robinson they can. And I think that James Cook is going to be used in about the same way. And so I feel like there's going to be some pass involvement. I don't feel like it's going to be enough as is to warrant me being a fan of starting Dalton Kincaid this week, especially not against the matchup that he has with that minimal pass involvement.
No, that's absolutely fair. I think Kincaid has been doing a really solid job to start the season there, and I'm not going to shy away from that right now. Laporta, he's fine. Again, I'm more concerned with Porter, even though it's hard to find other players to start at tight end. So sometimes guys like Laporta, you just got to start him and hope for the best. But again, it's a difficult matchup. Kyle Pitts, I'm going to shy away from him. He's not proven anything with him and Michael Penix that they have any real connection to trust. If Brock Bowers plays, you start Brock Bowers, obviously. Darren Waller, again, he's had touchdowns to back-to-back games. Again, I feel like he's very touchdown dependent despite getting 70 yards last week there. It's going to be a tougher matchup. I did have someone ask, though. Let me ask you this before we finish up these tight ends. Charger, Jalen Waddle or Drake London this week?
This week, Dolphins are Chargers. Is that what you said?
Dolphins, Chargers, and then Falcons, Bills, obviously.
I'm going to take this solely off of over-unders. So 49.5 versus 43.5. So Bills Falcons is totaled at 49.5 right now, at least according to ESPN. So that's, a whole touchdown higher than the Dolphins game. So I'm going to take Drake London. I think they're both going to get, their respectable numbers. I think they're both going to get the targets. They're obviously the ones in their offenses, Waddle because Tyreek is out, London because it's not Darnell Mooney. And so I think that, when I have questions like that, I turn to Vegas because Vegas knows a lot more than we do. And if Vegas is saying that there's going to be at least another touchdown in Bills Falcons, I like to trust that that's going to be the guy that I need. And so I would push Drake London, especially in a game where, like we said, there's going to be enough throwing volume on both sides. But I think the Falcons are going to have to lean more on Drake London and his receiving ability than the Dolphins will on Jalen Waddles.
Thank you. I will let the person know that. Thank you. All right. Yeah. So let's finish up these tight ends here, and we'll end our night here, guys. The other half of the tight ends that with bad matchups: Chika Conqua, Mason Taylor, Trey McBride, Zach Ertz, and Tommy Tremble. So who you want to highlight here, Coach Tyler?
Yeah, I'll highlight Mason Taylor. I love that you put garbage time because we talked a little bit about him being a garbage time merchant on Monday. But, you look at Taylor and he's had a very respectable, rookie season. He's starting to see the increase, and we talked about that on Monday, right? Week 1, 1 target. Week 2, 2 targets. Week 3, 6. Week 4, 7, and then last week against the Cowboys, 12 targets. Here's the great thing about garbage time. It's still included in the fantasy stats for the game. So it doesn't matter if Mason Taylor doesn't touch the ball until the game is a 40-point blowout. If he gets 5 receptions and ends up in the end zone, it still counts for you. It doesn't matter if he does it in the first quarter or with 2 minutes left in the game. So I like Mason Taylor this week. It is garbage time dependent. This is a Denver team that is most likely going to take this game. Like we said, they're probably not going to manage the clock too well. They're probably going to be airing it out and trying to keep pace with Denver, and they're not going to be able to do it. But if they're airing it out, it's going to Garrett Wilson or it's going to Mason Taylor. So give me the bet that Mason Taylor is going to get a little bit of that work.
Yeah, that's fair. And again, I have it as a garbage time thing because I just feel like that's what's going to happen with Mason Taylor this week here. The rest of these guys, Chika Conqua, I know Gunnar Helms is supposed to be getting more work. Not really thrilled with Chika Conqua's production this year. Trey McBride, you start him. Zach Ertz, maybe he's fine, but he's just been kind of underwhelmed this season. And Tommy Tremble, it's just... Again, the matchup was good last week. He didn't really do much. I just don't expect it to be very similar in this week's matchup here. So, all right. Well, that is going to wrap us up for our top 10 favorable and unfavorable matchups for wide receiver. So, let me see. Oh, I might have another question on my phone here real quick for you, Coach Tyler here. So,
let's see it.
All right. Let's see here. I'm trying to look at what it says right now. All right. Let's see. So do you start Tony Pollard or Michael Carter? Let's start with that.
Now that's difficult because Tony Pollard, has been good to start the season, but at the same time, we saw Tajay Spears come back and,
4 carries.
But they're going against the Raiders, so I think there's going to be a lot more run game. Maybe they try and use it as a Cam Ward breakout and, look at what he can do. But I don't know. I revert to Vegas. They're both dogs, but it's a 3.5 versus 7.5. And so I think I go Tony Pollard. A matchup of 1 and 4s is a lot nicer than a matchup of 2 and a 3, possibly missing their quarterback versus a 4 and a 1.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I'm kind of on the same page. When I was thinking about it, I was like, I think Tony Pollard is the guy I want. I want the favorable matchup.
Yeah.
Let's see here. He's got some wide receiver and flex help. Let's see. He's got Ladd and DJ Moore already starting at his wide receivers. And then he's got Kendrick Bourne, Juwan Jennings, and Romeo Doubs. So which one of those would you flex?
I feel like, is Jennings back this week?
He was upgraded to limited today.
If Mac is starting, I'm going to start Bourne.
Okay.
That's the way I'll play it. If Mac is starting, I'll start Bourne. If Purdy and Jennings are both playing, I'll start Jennings.
Okay.
But I feel like it's as quarterback dependent as it is, because we saw what Kendrick Bourne did with Mac Jones last week.
That's true. But there was no Juwan Jennings either. So
yeah, but I also feel like in practice, Kendrick Bourne is running a lot more with Mac Jones than Juwan Jennings is. So I think there's a little bit of that second team love. They know the timing and the routes are a lot easier to spot than Juwan Jennings, especially because he hasn't been practicing the last couple weeks.
Understood. All right. Well, I will let that person know as well. I know it's not me, guys, so don't worry. So that is going to wrap us up for the night, guys. Coach Tyler, anything you want to say before we get going?
Yeah, guys, go check out dynastynerds.com. We talk about them every show. It's because we're talking about every show, right? That's where me and Coach Steve met. We both do some work over there. Coach Steve does a billion things for them. I do a lot more on the Devy side, so y'all catch me a lot more in the spring, looking at all of our rookies, all of our recruits and everything coming through. But go check out dynastynerds.com. Bunch of great tools for in-season, out-of-season, dynasty, redraft, Devy, all the different things that you do. If there's a way to play fantasy, I think they even have some guillotine stuff over there. So if there's a way to play fantasy, there's a good chance there's some kind of niche there for you to pay attention to. But go check out dynastynerds.com. Use code COACH when you get over there. Let them know that we sent you. And thank you guys for checking us out.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I thank you guys for tuning in, whether you're tuned in live on our YouTube channel. We appreciate you guys as always. Or if you're listening live on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast, we obviously all appreciate you guys as well. Like I said, we do this for free. We do this because we like to talk fantasy here, and hopefully our advice can help you guys win championships, because that will make us happy, because that's what we like to do here at the Fantasy Coaches. So we thank you guys all for listening. Tune in until next time, guys. We'll probably be back maybe next Monday for a waiver show, but definitely next Thursday for your weekly start and sit. So till then, guys, thanks for listening. And you all have a great